Elias was a man of machines. He was not a soldier, not a leader, not even someone who cared much for glory or riches. His life was simple and steady, built on the hum of engines and the weight of steel. On the long trading routes between scattered colonies, he worked where others feared boredom. In the belly of the ship, where heat pressed close and the constant thrum of power made the walls vibrate. His hands were rough, scarred from years of twisting bolts and patching leaks. His fingernails carried permanent stains of grease that no amount of washing ever seemed to erase. But those hands were steady, reliable. They belonged to a man who understood that survival in space was not about flashy heroics, but about keeping the small, quiet things working, the machines that carried life through the void. Elias thought he knew the rhythm of life aboard the Calderon, the old freighter that served as his home. Work, eat, rest, repeat. Crew members came and went. Cargo changed. Planets appeared and disappeared through the viewing windows. But nothing ever truly surprised him anymore. Or at least that was what he believed. Until the day the captain announced they were taking on a passenger. Her name was Lyre. She was from the Terran, a species Elias had only heard of in passing. Rumors painted them as delicate, beautiful creatures, half-lit by their own faint glow, shaped by a gravity-heavy homeworld that left their bodies both strong and strangely fragile. Elias had no reason to pay much attention. A passenger was just cargo with eyes as far as he cared. But the first time he saw her, everything he thought he knew shifted. It was late, long past the crew's shift hours, when Elias entered the cargo bay to check a loose panel. The bay was dim, shadows stretching long across crates and tied-down supplies. He expected silence. Instead, he heard a sound, soft, broken, like someone trying not to cry. He froze. The sound came again, a trembling breath caught between pain and shame. Elias moved carefully, his boots echoing against the steel floor. And then he saw her. She was curled near the wall, her small frame folded tight against itself. Faint light pulsed from her skin, not steady but flickering, as though even her own glow was caught in struggle. Her arms were stiff, held out at unnatural angles, fingers bent backward as if pulled by invisible chains. Every part of her seemed locked, frozen yet trembling under some unseen weight. Elias hesitated. He had seen injuries before, burns, cuts, broken bones, but this was different. This was a body betraying itself. Then her eyes lifted. They were wide, luminous, filled with pain and fear, and from her lips came a whisper so soft he almost thought he imagined it. "My muscles won't let go. Human, please, I need your hands." The words cut through him, sharp as any blade. He didn't understand what she meant, but he could feel the desperation in her voice. The plea was raw, stripped of pride, clinging to hope. Elias knelt beside her. "What's happening? What do you need me to do?" Her breath came in short gasps. "My body. It remembers the pull of my world. Sometimes it does not stop. The muscles seize, lock. I cannot move. I cannot breathe." Her hands clawed at the air, stiff and rigid, as though invisible chains bound her bones. Elias reached for her arm. The moment his hand touched her skin, he understood. It was hard as stone. Her muscles were clenched so tightly they felt like metal rods beneath her glowing skin. No wonder she was trembling. Her own strength had turned into a prison. Elias swallowed hard. He wasn't a medic. He wasn't trained for this. But he couldn't just stand there. "Tell me what to do," he urged. "Your hands," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I need pressure. Warmth, please. Help me remember softness." Her words made little sense, but Elias obeyed. Slowly, carefully, he wrapped his rough human hands around her rigid forearm. He began to press, not too hard, not too soft, just steady. His thumbs moved in circles, trying to coax movement into stone. At first, nothing happened. She winced, her jaw clenched, a small whimper escaping. He almost pulled away, terrified he was hurting her. But then he saw it. The smallest twitch of her fingers, the faintest release in the iron grip of her own body. She sighed, a broken sound, but softer than before. Yes, like that. "Don't stop." So he didn't. He worked slowly, patiently, like coaxing a stubborn engine to life. His calloused hands, used to cold steel and stubborn bolts, now held something fragile and trembling. And slowly, beneath his touch, the stone softened. Minutes passed. Her arm bent just slightly. Her fingers loosened, curling instead of clawing. Her shoulders sank against the wall as if she'd been carrying a weight for hours and had finally set it down. Elias felt his own chest loosen, relief flooding him in a way he could not explain. When at last her body gave way to softness, she slumped forward, leaning into him. Her head rested lightly against his chest, glowing faintly in the dim cargo bay. Her voice, barely audible, whispered, "Your hands. Stronger, steadier than I imagined. You gave me back movement." Elias didn't know what to say. His throat felt tight. He had only meant to help for a moment, but the look in her eyes, relief, gratitude, and something deeper, made him realize this was not a moment. This was a beginning. And as he sat there, holding her trembling form, Elias knew that nothing on this ship, nothing in his life, would be the same again. The next morning, Elias woke with sore hands. His palms ached, his fingers felt heavy, and when he stretched, he realized how hard he had worked them the night before. But it was not the usual kind of pain he carried from fixing machines. This pain was different. It reminded him of the fragile weight he had held, the trembling light that leaned against him in the cargo bay. Lyrae. Her name whispered in his mind like a secret he wasn't supposed to keep, but couldn't let go. When Elias went back to his duties, tightening bolts and checking circuits, his mind wandered again and again to her. He had helped many things in his life: broken pipes, leaking vents, engines that refused to start, but never a living being in such a way. The thought of his rough, grease-stained hands easing pain from something so delicate almost felt unreal. But later, when the call came again, he realized it was no dream. That evening, a crewmate shouted from down the corridor, "Mechanic!" "The Terran girl, she's having another fit." Elias dropped his tools without hesitation. His boots slammed against the floor as he ran, heart pounding. He found her in the mess hall this time, her body twisted in an awkward position against one of the chairs. Her arms were rigid, locked at sharp angles, and her breathing came in short, pained gasps. A circle of crew members stood around, unsure of what to do. "Don't touch her," one muttered. "She's too fragile. You'll break her." Elias ignored them. He pushed through, knelt down, and placed his hands against her forearms. He remembered the way her body had felt last night. Stone turned to flesh under steady pressure. Her eyes flickered open. Even through the pain, she recognized him. Relief washed across her glowing face, and her lips trembled as she whispered, "Your hands. Again, please." The crew stared. To them, Elias was just a mechanic, nothing special. But here was a Terran, reaching for him as if he alone carried the cure to her suffering. Slowly he worked. His thumbs pressed along her stiff muscles, coaxing, warming, patient. Her body resisted like rusted gears, refusing to turn, but he did not give up. He knew patience. He had lived his whole life with stubborn machines that needed time. Bit by bit, her muscles yielded. Her hands loosened. Her chest rose and fell in steadier breaths. At last she sagged against him, exhausted but free from the iron grip of her own body. The crew, silent all this time, finally whispered among themselves. Words like strange, impossible, and lucky floated around the room. But Elias didn't hear them. He was too focused on Lyrae, on the way her glowing eyes searched his face with a trust so deep it startled him. "You stayed again," she murmured. "I will always stay," Elias answered without thinking. From that night forward, Elias became something he never expected. Her guardian. Whenever Lyrae's body betrayed her, he was the one she called for. She did not raise her voice, did not cry out, but whispered his name like a prayer, and he came running. In the engine bay, in the sleeping quarters, in the narrow corridors of the freighter, wherever she froze, Elias's hands brought her back. At first, he told himself it was just duty. No one else knew how to help her. No one else dared. But soon he stopped lying to himself. The truth was simple. He could not bear to see her in pain. And every time she looked at him afterward, every time she whispered "thank you" with trembling lips, he felt something shift in his chest. Lyrae, too, began to change. At first, she had kept to herself, sitting quietly in corners, afraid to draw attention. Her glowing skin made her impossible to ignore. But she tried to fade into the background. Yet with Elias by her side, she began to walk more openly around the ship. She sat at the mess table with the crew, even if she ate little. She asked questions about the stars, about the strange worlds they passed, about the engines Elias spent so much time with. Sometimes, when her body was calm, She would come to the engine bay just to watch him work. She would sit on a crate, glowing faintly in the dim light, and listen to the hum of the machines. "Your hands fix everything," she said one night, her voice soft but steady. "Not just me, but the ship, the air, the power that keeps us alive." "How can hands do so much?" Elias shrugged, embarrassed. "They're just hands. Nothing special." But Leary shook her head. "To me, they are everything." The crew began to notice their bond. At first, there were jokes, playful comments about Elias being the alien's caretaker, or whispers about how she clung to him like a shadow. But soon even the jokes faded. They saw how her pain stilled only under his touch, how her trembling body softened in his presence. They saw how Elias dropped everything every single time to be at her side. Respect grew where laughter had been, and in the quiet moments, when it was only the two of them, a different kind of respect bloomed. Something warmer, something unnamed but undeniable. One evening, after a long day of repairs, Elias sat in the engine bay rubbing his sore hands. Leary sat beside him, her glow faint but peaceful. "Does it hurt you?" she asked suddenly. "What?" he replied. "When you help me. Do your hands ache?" Elias looked at his palms, the skin red and worn. He smiled faintly. "Sometimes. But it doesn't matter." Her eyes softened. "Why do you do it?" "You owe me nothing." He hesitated. He had no simple answer. But after a long silence, he said quietly, "Because when I see you in pain, I can't stand it. And if my hands can make it stop, then that's reason enough." Leary looked at him for a long time. Then she whispered, almost as if afraid of her own words, "You don't just give me back movement, Elias, you give me back hope." Elias felt his chest tighten. For a man who fixed machines, who lived in Greece in silence, those words struck deeper than anything else ever had. And in that moment he realized this was no longer about duty. It was about her. That night, as the Calderon drifted silently through the endless dark, two lives, one human, one alien, were no longer separate. A fragile bond had begun, woven by pain, trust, and the simple strength of human hands. And though neither said it out loud, both of them knew this was only the beginning. Life aboard the Calderon settled into a strange rhythm. The ship carried its cargo through the endless stars, engines humming day and night, the crew working in their steady shifts. But for Elias, time was now divided differently. There was the time before Leary called for him and the time after. Every day without fail, there came a moment when her body betrayed her. Sometimes it was her arms, seizing tight as if invisible chains bound them. Sometimes her legs stiffened, locking until she could not stand. Other times it was her chest, where each breath became a battle. And always when it happened, she whispered his name. Elias. No one else. Only him, and Elias came, no matter what he was doing. He could be elbow deep in an engine, covered in grease and sweat, or halfway through a meal. But the moment he heard her call, he dropped everything. His boots thundered across the ship until he found her. His hands, scarred and steady, wrapped around her fragile frame, working warmth back into her frozen muscles. The crew stopped questioning it. They learned to step aside when he rushed past. They learned to let him kneel beside her without interruption. They saw that nothing else mattered to him in those moments, and slowly, they grew quiet. At first, they had laughed. Some said Elias was playing nurse. Others joked he was the alien's pet mechanic. But after weeks of watching, the jokes died on their lips. They saw how Leary's trembling stilled only when Elias touched her. They saw how his hands alone carried the patience to free her from pain. There was no laughter left in that. Only respect. But for Elias, it was more than respect. The more he held her, the more he listened to her faint whispers and steady breaths, the more he realized how fragile she truly was. Yet in her fragility, he found a strength he could not explain. She endured pain that would have broken most men. She endured isolation, knowing no one but him could help her. And still, when her muscles softened again, when her body remembered how to breathe, she always looked up at him with eyes full of gratitude. Those eyes haunted him. He told himself it was duty, that he was doing what anyone would have done. But in the silence of the engine bay, when she sat glowing softly beside him, he knew the truth. It was not just duty. It was something deeper. One evening, Elias found her in the observation deck. She was seated close to the wide glass window, where stars stretched into endless rivers of light. Her body glowed faintly, casting soft patterns against the steel walls. He sat beside her without speaking. For a while they simply watched the stars. The hum of the ship surrounded them, steady and calm. At last, Lyrae broke the silence. "Do you ever feel small?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias glanced at her. "All the time. The universe doesn't care about men like me. I fix ships, not history." She turned her head, eyes catching his. "You fixed me." The words sank into him like a blade and a balm at once. He tried to look away, but she held his gaze. "You think you are small," she continued, "but to me you are larger than the stars." Elias swallowed hard, unsure what to say. He wanted to laugh, to dismiss her words, but her face was too earnest, too real. He could only nod, his throat tight. From that night, their bond grew beyond necessity. Lyrae began to spend her free hours with him in the engine bay. She asked questions about the machines, her glowing fingers tracing harmlessly along pipes and panels. She listened as Elias explained the hum of power, the flow of air, the importance of balance. She didn't always understand, but she smiled as if every word mattered. Sometimes she would hum softly, a tune from her world. It was a melody unlike anything Elias had ever heard, strange, haunting, and beautiful. He would pretend to keep working, but in truth he listened as if her voice was the only sound that mattered in the galaxy. And sometimes, when her body betrayed her, she no longer cried. She no longer looked ashamed. She simply reached for him, knowing he would be there, and he always was. But one night the attack was worse than usual. Elias found her collapsed in the corridor, her entire body rigid as stone. Her glowing skin flickered wildly like a dying flame. She gasped for air, her chest refusing to rise fully. Panic clawed at Elias's chest. "Stay with me, Lyrae, stay with me." His hands moved frantically, pressing, massaging, coaxing. Sweat poured down his forehead. Her body fought him harder than ever before. She whimpered, eyes wide with fear. Don't let me go," she gasped. "Never," Elias whispered fiercely. "I won't let you go." Minute by minute, her body softened until at last her chest rose freely, pulling in a deep, desperate breath. Her trembling eased and she collapsed against him, tears streaming silently down her glowing cheeks. He held her tight, his own heart hammering. He had never been so terrified. The thought of losing her had carved a hollow in his chest he never wanted to feel again. Later, when she could finally speak, she looked at him with weak but steady eyes. "No one else would do this for me," she whispered. "Not even my own kind." "But you—" She reached up with trembling fingers, touching his rough cheek. "You are not like others." Elias caught her hand, gently pressing it against his skin. His voice was low but steady. "You don't need anyone else. You have me." Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came. Instead, she rested her head against his shoulder, glowing faintly in the quiet dark. And Elias knew, without speaking it aloud, that whatever this was between them, fragile, strange, unspoken, it had become the most important thing in his life. That night, the Calderon drifted silently through the sea of stars. In the engine bay, in the corridors, in the quiet spaces where no one else looked, a bond had been forged, one built not on duty, not on chance, but on something far stronger. For in the endless cold of space, where machines hummed and silence stretched forever, two beings had found warmth in each other, and neither of them wanted to let go. The Calderon was an old ship. She carried cargo between worlds, never meant for war, never built for defense. But in the dark stretches of space, danger was always waiting. It came without warning. One night, alarms tore through the ship. Red lights flashed against steel walls, and a siren wailed like a wounded animal. Elias dropped his wrench at once, heart pounding. The captain's voice thundered over the comms. "Boarding party! Pirates on approach! All hands prepare to defend!" The corridors erupted with chaos. Crew members ran, grabbing whatever weapons they had, old rifles, shock rods, even metal pipes. The Calderon was no warship, but survival demanded fight. Elias's first thought was not the engines, not the cargo, not even himself. It was Lyrae. He sprinted through the corridors, boots pounding against the metal floor. The air smelled of ozone and fear. Shouts echoed, footsteps clattered, but Elias's mind was fixed on one place. Her quarters. When he reached her door, it was already open. Inside, Lyrae was on the floor, her body stiff as carved stone. Her arms were bent painfully against her chest. her legs frozen in place. Her glow flickered weakly like a dying ember. Her eyes met his, wide with terror. Her lips trembled as she forced out a whisper. "Elias, don't stay, go, you must fight with your people." But Elias was already kneeling beside her, his hands pressed firmly against her arms, working, coaxing, fighting the iron grip of her own muscles. "I'm not leaving you," he said, voice hard with determination. She shook her head weakly. "If you stay, they will kill you, please. Save yourself." Elias's hands never stopped moving. His thumbs pressed, his fingers kneaded, his palms carried warmth into her frozen body. He could hear footsteps outside, the clash of steel, the sound of blaster fire in the distance. The ship shuddered as weapons struck its hull, but in this small room all that mattered was her. Her breathing grew shallow. Every second stretched into an eternity. Elias worked harder, sweat running down his face. His arms ached, his palms burned, but he pressed on. "Stay with me, Lyrae," he whispered. "Stay with me." Tears slid down her glowing cheeks. "Why? Why risk yourself for me?" Elias met her gaze, his own eyes fierce. "Because you're worth it. You're worth more than my life." Her lips parted, but no words came. She only stared at him, light flickering across her face as if she could not believe the depth of his promise. Outside, the crew fought desperately. The ship groaned under heavy fire. Explosions rattled the walls, shaking dust from the ceiling. Shouts of pain and anger echoed down the corridors, but Elias did not move. He pressed harder, forcing strength into her rigid body. Every part of him screamed to go help the others, but his heart refused. He could not leave her, not like this, not ever. Minutes felt like hours. Slowly, painfully, her body began to soften. Her fingers twitched. Her chest rose with a deeper breath. Her legs loosened from their cruel stiffness. At last, she collapsed forward, falling against him. He caught her, holding her tight, his arms shaking from both exhaustion and relief. Her voice was barely audible. "You stayed, even when death was outside." "Of course I stayed," he whispered, his lips close to her ear. "I told you I won't let go." The fighting raged on outside. Elias knew he could not keep her safe here forever. He pulled her gently to her feet, supporting her with one arm around her shoulders. She leaned against him, her glow faint but steadier now. Together they moved through the corridor. The ship was chaos, crew members firing from behind cover, sparks raining from damaged panels, smoke stinging the air. Pirates in ragged armor clashed with desperate defenders. Elias shielded Lyrae with his body, guiding her quickly toward the engine bay. If the pirates wanted control of the ship, they would go there. And Elias knew every corner, every bolt. It was the only place he could fight back while keeping her safe. When they reached the bay, Elias secured the doors. He sat her down carefully against the wall, his hands lingering on her shoulders as if afraid she would freeze again. Her eyes searched his face. "You should be with them," she whispered. "With your crew. I am where I belong," Elias said firmly. "With you." She closed her eyes, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. But this time they were not only from pain. The battle outside dragged on. Elias could hear it. Distant explosions, the cries of men and women locked in struggle. The ship shook again and again. Lyrae's glow pulsed faintly beside him, her breaths uneven but no longer desperate. He tightened his grip on the wrench he carried. It was not a weapon, but it would serve if it had to. He had fought machines with less. When footsteps thundered outside the engine bay doors, Elias stood tall, placing himself between the sound and Lyrae. His heart hammered, but his hands were steady. The doors shook as someone tried to force them open. Lyrae's voice, faint but clear, reached him. "Don't fight for me. Stay alive." Elias looked back at her, his eyes burning with resolve. "I'm not fighting for you, Lyrae, I'm fighting with you." "There's a difference." She met his gaze, and for the first time she smiled through her tears. The doors burst open. Pirates rushed in, weapons raised. Elias roared and swung his wrench with all the strength in his arms. His body fueled by something far greater than fear. For Lyrae, for the promise he had made. And in that moment, in the chaos of smoke and fire, Elias proved that human hands, scarred, weary, and unyielding, could hold more strength than any weapon. That night, the Calderon shook with battle, and the outcome was still unknown. But one truth had already been written, burned into the hearts of two fragile beings clinging to each other in the dark. When all else broke, when the universe demanded sacrifice, Elias had chosen, and he would never let go. The air inside the Calderon was filled with smoke and the sharp scent of burnt metal. The battle had shaken the ship to its bones. Sparks hissed from broken wires. Steam poured from cracked pipes. The once steady hum of the engines now groaned like a wounded beast. Elias stood in the engine bay, chest heaving, his wrench slick with blood, some of it his own, some of it from the pirates he had driven back. His arms ached, but he refused to drop his tool. His eyes burned from the smoke, yet they searched only for her, Lyrae. She was still seated against the wall, glowing faintly in the haze. Her hands trembled, her chest rising in unsteady breaths. She had watched him fight with nothing but a piece of iron, and she had seen something she had never imagined in all her years. A human who fought not only for survival, but for her. Her voice was weak but sharp in the silence that followed. You should not have done that. Elias turned, wiping sweat and soot from his brow. His jaw was set hard, but his voice was steady. And let them take you? Never. The ship groaned as another blast hit its side. The walls shook, dust falling from the ceiling. Somewhere down the corridor, a crew member screamed. The pirates were still on board. The battle was not over. Elias crouched beside her, his hands gentle as they checked her arms, her legs. He pressed his palms against her muscles, loosening what stiffness remained. His touch was strong, but it carried warmth and care. Lyrae's eyes watered. Why do your hands always bring me back? Elias met her gaze. Because I won't let your body betray you. Not while I'm here. Her lips quivered. She wanted to argue, to tell him that he could not save her every time, that she was a burden in this war, but her heart refused. Instead, she let his hands work, and she let herself believe, for the first time, that maybe she was not alone in her pain. Suddenly, the calm crackled above them. The captain's voice, strained but unbroken, came through. All crew, pirates retreating. We've held them. Damage heavy, but we're alive. Elias exhaled in relief, his forehead resting against Lyrae's shoulder for a brief moment. She felt the weight of his exhaustion, the trembling in his body he tried so hard to hide. You fought like a warrior, she whispered. I fought like a man who refuses to lose you, he replied softly. But the relief was short-lived. The pirates had planted explosives before fleeing. The Calderon shook with a deep rumble, and the engine bay lights flickered violently. An alarm screamed through the ship. Critical damage, the computer's voice announced coldly. Core breach in progress. Evacuate immediately. Elias's stomach dropped. If the engines went, the whole ship would tear apart. He looked at Lyrae, her glow dim, her body fragile. Evacuating through smoke-filled corridors would be nearly impossible for her in this state. Her eyes met his. She had heard the alarm, too. She forced her stiff body upright, clutching his arm for support. Leave me, she said, her voice breaking. Save yourself. He gripped her shoulders firmly, shaking his head. Don't you ever say that again. I'm not leaving you. You'll die, she whispered, tears burning down her face. Then we die together, Elias answered. His tone was fierce, but his eyes were gentle. I made you a promise, Lyrae. I will never let go. The core alarm screamed louder. Elias knew he had minutes, maybe less. His eyes darted around the bay, searching for a solution. His gaze landed on the maintenance panel, an old bypass system that could reroute the failing energy just long enough to stabilize the core. It was a dangerous fix. One wrong move and the engine could explode instantly. Elias tightened his grip on his wrench. He turned back to Lyrae. Stay here. I'll fix it. Her hand shot out, trembling, catching his wrist. No, Elias, it will kill you. He smiled faintly, placing his free hand over hers. I fix broken things. That's what I do. Trust me. Her lips parted, but she could not stop him. She could only watch, helpless, as he climbed into the maintenance shaft, smoke swirling around him. The heat inside was unbearable. Sparks snapped inches from his face. Metal burned his skin when his arms brushed the walls. Sweat dripped into his eyes, blinding him, but he pushed forward. His hands moved with memory and instinct, gripping, twisting, pulling wires with a speed born from years of labor. Every second counted. The alarms counted down mercilessly. Core breach in 30 seconds. 29. Lyrae pressed herself against the wall outside, glowing faintly in the smoke. Her hands clenched together as she prayed in silence to stars she no longer believed in. Her body ached to freeze again, to betray her, but she forced herself to stay present. Elias, she whispered, voice shaking. Please, don't leave me. Inside the shaft, Elias heard her voice echo. He closed his eyes for half a second, letting it wash over him like fire and light. And then, with one final push, he slammed the wrench into the bypass, forcing the energy flow into a new path. The ship screamed, the walls vibrating like thunder. Light flared, blinding. Then silence. The alarms cut off. The hum of the core steadied. The ship shuddered but held. Elias slumped forward, chest heaving, his body scorched and shaking. Slowly, painfully, he crawled out of the shaft. Lyrae rushed, or rather stumbled, toward him. Her glow brighter now, fueled by relief and terror. She fell to her knees beside him, hands trembling as they touched his burned arms, his soot-stained face. You fool, she sobbed. You almost gave me your life. Elias, barely able to lift his head, gave her a tired smile. I told you. I fix things. Even ships. Even you. Her tears fell freely, glowing drops against his chest. She pressed her forehead to his, their breaths mingling in the smoky air. Don't do that again, she whispered fiercely. Don't make me watch you break for me. He closed his eyes, too tired to speak, but his hands, scarred, blistered, unyielding, rose once more. They cupped her face gently, as if even in his weakness. He still chose her above everything, and she realized, with a pain sharper than her illness and a warmth deeper than her glow, that no force in the stars could pry his hands away. That night, the Calderon drifted in silence, wounded but alive. The crew mourned their losses, but they also whispered of the mechanic who had saved them all. Yet for Elias, none of that mattered. All that mattered was the fragile alien trembling in his arms, whispering against his ear as she clung to him in the dark. My muscles won't let go, but you do not let go either. And maybe that will save me. The Calderon drifted in silence after the battle. Its hull bore scars of fire. Its corridors smelled of smoke and blood, but the ship lived. The crew moved quietly, patching holes, sealing broken panels, and carrying their wounded. Every step echoed like a reminder of how close they had all come to death. In the engine bay, Elias sat with his back against the wall. His arms were wrapped in bandages, burned from the heat of the bypass. His face was tired, streaked with soot that no washcloth could fully remove. Yet his hands, though blistered, still moved gently, pressing, kneading, guiding. For Lyrae. She lay beside him, her body trembling after the strain of the night. Her glow had grown faint, like a candle near its end. But when Elias touched her, warmth returned in small sparks. Every breath she took seemed easier when his hands were near. Her voice broke the silence, soft and uncertain. Elias, why do you keep saving me? He looked at her, eyes calm but full of weight. Because I can't imagine this ship without you. I can't imagine my days without your voice. I can't imagine my life without your light. Her lips parted, but no sound came. For years, she had carried her illness like a curse, believing herself unworthy of closeness. And here was a human, rough, scarred, stubborn, holding her as if she was the most precious thing in the galaxy. Later, whispers spread among the crew. He risked all our lives for her, one said bitterly. He nearly burned himself in the core. Just for an alien, another muttered. They're too close, a third warned. It's not right. She'll only drag him down. Elias heard the words. He felt their eyes on him, heavy with judgment. But when he returned to Lyrae's side, none of it mattered. Still, she saw the shadow in his gaze. She touched his bandaged hand gently. Your people. They don't trust me. He sighed, leaning his head against the cold metal wall. They're scared. They don't understand you. They don't know how strong you really are. Her eyes glistened. I don't feel strong, Elias. I feel broken, and you shouldn't have to carry my weight. Elias turned to her, his voice rough with emotion. Don't you see? You're not a weight. You're the reason I keep fighting. You're the reason I keep moving forward. That night in the dim light of the engine bay, Lyrae could not sleep. Her body trembled with stiffness, her muscles fighting her again. But Elias was there, his hands warm on her arms, loosening each knot of pain with patience. As he worked, she whispered, almost too softly to hear. On my world, we do not touch often. It is rare, sacred. Only the dearest are allowed close. Elias paused, meeting her gaze. And I? Her cheeks glowed faintly like light behind a veil. She closed her eyes, voice shaking. You are the first I have ever let this close. The first I have ever trusted with my body, with my pain. For a long moment, Elias said nothing. His heart pounded, his throat tight. He wanted to speak, but words felt small compared to the weight of what she had just given him. Finally, he whispered, "Then I'll honor it. Always." Days passed and the ship slowly healed. The crew patched the hull, restored power to broken sections, and buried their dead in the cold silence of space. Life moved on, but between Elias and Lyrae, something deeper was growing. She began to smile when he entered a room. He began to breathe easier when her glow filled the darkness. Her illness still bound her in chains, but his hands became her key again and again. And with each touch, something invisible but unbreakable tied them closer. Yet not all hearts were warm. One evening, the captain called Elias to her quarters. She was a stern woman, her uniform scorched from battle, her eyes sharp as glass. "You saved the ship," she said flatly, "but you also endangered it. You risked everything for one alien." Elias stood tall, though his body still ached. "I did what I had to. She needed me." The captain's eyes narrowed. "Elias, listen. I don't doubt your courage, but this bond you're forming, it clouds your judgment. She is fragile. She is not one of us. You can't carry her forever." Elias's jaw clenched. "Watch me." For a long moment, silence stretched. The captain sighed, shaking her head. "One day you'll have to choose, the ship or her." Elias left without answering, but her words cut deep. Back in the engine bay, he found Lyrae waiting. She had tried to stand on her own, leaning against the wall, but her legs betrayed her and she nearly collapsed. Elias rushed forward, catching her before she hit the floor. Her body stiffened painfully in his arms, and she gasped, fighting against it. "No," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Not now. Not in front of you." Elias held her tighter, whispering fiercely, "Don't hide from me. Don't ever hide. If you break, I'll hold you. If you fall, I'll lift you. That's what my hands are for." She buried her face in his chest, her glow trembling. "You'll burn yourself out for me." "Then let me burn," he said, "as long as you don't go dark." That night, when the ship was quiet, Lyrae whispered something she had never said to anyone, not even on her own world. "Elias, if my body takes me one day, if I cannot breathe, cannot move, I want your hands to be the last thing I feel." Elias's heart broke and mended in the same breath. He pulled her close, his voice steady though his chest ached. "Then you'll feel them forever?"
"Because I won't let go, not now."
"Not ever." Her tears glowed like falling stars against his bandages, and for the first time since her illness began, Lyrae felt not cursed, not fragile, but chosen. That fragile bond, built in pain, sealed in fire, and strengthened by hands that refused to release, became the heart of the Calderon. The crew whispered doubts. The captain questioned loyalty. The universe loomed with greater threats. But in that quiet corner of the ship, between a weary mechanic and a trembling alien, something stronger than fear was growing. A promise. A love that refused to let go. The Calderon floated in the endless dark, a wounded ship carrying even more wounded hearts. The scars of battle remained, and silence often pressed heavy on its crew. Yet inside the engine bay, where machines hummed and shadows lingered, two lives beat together in fragile rhythm. Elias sat beside Lyrae, his hands moving slowly over her arms, pressing warmth into her stiff muscles. Her glow had weakened again. Every day her body fought against her, and every day he fought with it. His hands bore new blisters, his arms carried new aches, but still he worked. Lyrae watched him, her eyes wide with quiet wonder. She had tried to stop him so many times, begged him to rest, warned him that he was giving too much, but every time his answer had been the same: "I will never let go." And he hadn't. Not once. But the universe was not done testing them. Weeks after the pirate attack, a greater shadow loomed. A hostile fleet appeared on the horizon of stars, far larger and stronger than the raiders. The Calderon, damaged and underpowered, was no match. The captain called the crew together. Her voice was calm, but sorrow edged every word. "They have demanded we surrender. If we refuse, they will destroy us. I have bought us hours, but not more." Fear rippled through the crew. Some cried out, others cursed. A few sank into silence, already preparing for death. Elias looked at Lyrae. Her glow flickered weakly, but her eyes burned with a quiet fire. "They will take me," she whispered. "They will use me. They always take the weakest." "Not while I breathe," Elias said fiercely. His hands closed around hers, calloused and scarred. Not you. Never you. As the fleet drew closer, the crew scrambled to ready defenses, but hope was thin. The ship was too broken, too small. It was like standing with bare hands before a storm. In the engine bay, Lyrae trembled. Her body betrayed her again, muscles locking until she could not even raise her arms. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Elias, she whispered, voice cracking. My muscles, they won't let go. I can't even hold you. Elias knelt before her, his bandaged hands cupping her face gently. Then I'll hold you for both of us. You don't have to fight alone. You never did. Her tears glowed brighter now, like tiny stars falling onto his palms. When the enemy fleet hailed them, the captain ordered silence. But Elias could not stay still. He stood, his heart hammering, and spoke into the calm. This is Elias, mechanic of the Calderon. You think we are weak. You think we will surrender. But hear me well, we are human, and humans don't let go. The bridge crew stared in shock. The captain's eyes widened, but she did not stop him. His words carried across the ship, across the void, into every ear. I have held broken machines together with my bare hands. I have fought pirates with nothing but a wrench. I have carried a life more fragile than my own, day after day, because I refused to let go. And if you come for us, you will learn that there is nothing stronger in this galaxy than these hands. Lyrae listened, tears blurring her vision. She had never heard such fire, never felt such certainty. In that moment, she believed what she had always doubted, that her life mattered, that her glow was not a burden but a beacon. The enemy laughed at first, but when their scans revealed the unstable core of the Calderon, they paused. If Elias chose, he could overload the engines, turning the ship into a weapon powerful enough to destroy them all. And they realized, this human meant every word. The fleet pulled back. Unwilling to risk such defiance, the crew erupted with relief. Some cheered, others wept. The captain looked at Elias with new respect, though her eyes held a warning too. He had spoken for them all, and for now he had saved them. But in the engine bay there was no celebration, only quiet. Elias returned to Lyrae's side, sinking to the floor, exhaustion crashing over him like a wave. She reached for him, her stiff fingers trembling until they brushed his burned hand. You scared me, she whispered. He smiled faintly. I scare myself sometimes. Her eyes shone as she leaned close, resting her forehead against his. You gave them your strength, but you gave me something greater. You gave me your hands, your promise, and I'll keep giving, he murmured, until the end. That night, when the ship finally slept, Lyrae stirred. Her body trembled again, muscles locking harder than ever before. She gasped, panic rising. Elias, Elikas, I can't breathe. He woke instantly, pulling her into his arms. His hands worked fast, pressing, kneading, loosening every rigid line. Sweat poured down his face, but he refused to stop. Stay with me, Lyrae, please stay. Her body fought him, her glow flickering dangerously low. She choked, tears streaming as she tried to speak. If I let go now. Promise me. Don't say that, Elias begged, voice breaking. Don't you dare. Promise, she whispered, her light dimming. Promise. Your hands will not leave me. Elias held her tighter, his whole body trembling. I promise. Even if you fall, even if the stars go dark, I will never let go. Minutes stretched into eternity. His hands never stopped. His voice never faltered as he whispered her name again and again. Slowly, painfully, her body loosened, her breath steadied, her glow returned in fragile waves. She collapsed against him, sobbing, her arms weak but wrapping around his waist. You saved me. Again, she whispered. No, Elias said softly, his tears falling into her hair. You saved me. You gave me something worth fighting for. In the days that followed, the Calderon limped toward safety. The crew repaired what they could, and hope returned in small pieces. But in the engine bay, where grease and scars mixed with glowing tears, a different kind of hope bloomed. It was not the hope of survival. It was the hope of two souls who had found each other in the dark. Lyrae's illness remained. Elias's hands grew rougher, his arms wearier. Yet neither faltered. Their bond was not in strength of body, but in strength of promise. When her muscles would not let go, his hands would not let go either. And in that fragile balance, something eternal was born. One evening, as stars drifted past the windows, Lyrae whispered, her voice full of wonder and trembling joy, my muscles may betray me, but your hands never do. And because of you, Elias, I am not afraid anymore. He smiled, pulling her close, his voice steady as the universe around them. Then let the stars hear it. Let the void remember. I am yours always, I will never let go. And in that quiet, scarred engine bay, human hands held an alien heart, and together they glowed brighter than all the stars outside.